XRP token holders, is this asset a meme coin or do we have real world utility? Well, during today's episode, we're going to show you a brand new response out of Ripple CTO David Schwartz, where he highlights how we may not even need utility to reach some of the higher price targets that we're anticipating. Where this market is today, it's primarily driven by speculation, future predictions, and most importantly, gambling with some of these meme coin projects. We're going to speak to how that's impacting the XRP community as well as we wait for regulation, ETFs, and much more inside the United States. What does it say about the value of this token today and where we could be over the next couple of years? Hello and welcome back to another episode of Good Evening Crypto, your favorite crypto news related channel. If you enjoy this content, smash that like button and subscribe as you're going to get an update every single day, 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. And for the sake of today's episode, I thought it would be valuable to start off today by comparing the two blockchains that are constantly compared to one another, Solana and Ripple. And although these two projects are often compared to one another, they're built to do completely different things. When you look at the project in Solana, it's built for speed and apps. It's like a super fast computer, but with crypto involved. You've got DeFi, NFTs, meme coins, anything you can think of, you can launch on the Solana network. But what it wasn't designed for is banks or regulated money movement. Now, Ripple, on the other hand, this was built from the ground up for payments. The XRP ledger settles transactions 3 to 5 seconds, nearly free, handles multiple currencies, and plugs into the banking system with compliance built in mind. It's already working with central banks and licensed around the world. So if Solana is the blockchain for the next generation of apps, Ripple would be the blockchain for the next generation of finance. And keep that in mind as we go through the episode today, because Solana can be successful, Bitcoin can be successful, Ethereum can be successful, and Ripple can be successful. One thing that's absolutely clear is this market is still developing before our very eyes, and it's products like XRP that are still yet to have their defining moment for adoption. But we're going to start off with this breaking news out of David Schwartz today, where he's highlighting what is the difference between XRP's value now and what it may be in a few years. The funny thing is, according to David, I think most of the value in most cryptocurrencies comes from expected future speculation. So if what you care about is the future price change, what people think will happen is much more important than what actually has happened in the past. Look at Bitcoin. Most of the current investment thesis is something like, imagine if most companies started storing 1% of their treasury in Bitcoin. What will that do to the price? Well, what that's saying is in the future, more people will speculate on the future price appreciation than speculate currently. It's not even based on future utility of this asset. It's based on expected future speculation. I want to believe that utility matters. I really do, said David Schwartz. But what he's hinting at here is that it's not nearly as important as people think. And if you believe we are still in a speculative phase of this market, smash that like button. If you think we're in utility, leave a comment underneath the video. But Johnny, what does this mean for XRP investors? Does this mean that XRP is currently a meme coin because real world utility hasn't kicked in yet?
Well, Ab, so first of all, let me smash the button. I guess I'm going to need to, because you asked if you believe it's speculation. I mean, I've been saying for 4 years, we're in the speculation phase of crypto, and everybody's, no, we're utility. No, guys, we're not in utility. We're nowhere near utility. I'm a technology guy, right, Abs? So I understand that two things happen from an investment perspective. And David literally just said it. People speculate on speculation, or they speculate on the utility. So for Bitcoin, we have to address them separately. For Bitcoin, they're speculating on the speculation that it's going to become a treasury for countries, right, or governments. And that is a thing that people believe, and that's it. And then when it does, that will ultimately become the utility for it. Now, for XRP and Solana and all the other cryptos, each one of those has a different real-world use case they solve for. Right now, every single person who's investing in the majority of these, other than Ethereum and Solana, you could make the argument that they have been, there's definitely utility in Ethereum, right? That's real. It's earning fees, and that's real. And then the rest of them, those are going to grow their utilities. Now, let's take Solana, for example. We know there's massive sales there. We know that they're being used on the rails. And that's kind of that utility is starting to build up. XRP, for example, we know that more right now. I'm not going to say it's a meme coin. No, because here's the difference. A meme coin has zero utility. Like think of a Doge. What does it do? Nothing. Unless you decide to say, hey, we're going to, like Elon. If Elon says, I'm going to grab this coin and I'm going to make this my payment system, then that becomes utility. If he doesn't do that, it does nothing. Whereas with XRP, the way you want to think about that technology is it can solve transactional issues, finance, as the tweet you showed. If no companies ever adopt it, yeah, you could kind of argue like, well, it was a crypto, but it's just kind of doing nothing, so it's like a meme. But we know a big difference here. It's not that big of a secret. Everybody knows Ripple, the company, is buying their way into this industry, right? And they have done that by buying certain companies, financial companies, very interesting, right? That then they're going to build digital rails between them to be able to do certain things, and they're going to deploy their XRP. So they're actually going to create a use case. So for me, you can't sit here and say, no, I would not say it's a meme coin. Absolutely not. It has a real world utility. The question is, will that ever evolve? Well, if Ripple wasn't doing what it's doing, you'd sit there and say, I don't know, maybe, they're going to have to convince a lot of companies to do it, but they're so flush with cash, they're able to do it themselves. And that's what they're doing. They are building, I've been saying it for years, they're building utility right now. And I think that is going to lead to use cases of the internet will appreciate in price for XRP. And that's what we're all gambling on. I mean, let's face it. Now, maybe not gamble, but that's what we're all speculating on, is that it's going to have use cases to drive the price and value up over time. So that's how I see it, my friend.
Well, a couple of big things come to mind as Johnny does his analysis there. And let us know if you agree or disagree underneath the video. But one thing is very clear. We're in a completely different environment than we were just 12 months ago. And I showed you guys this article from Forbes yesterday where even they're admitting XRP is now a very different beast than it was just 1 year ago. Last October, this asset was trading at 50 cents in value. Today, with all the fear, all the speculation, we are still trading north of $2.50. And we have some of the largest names in the American economy attending the Ripple Swell event, showing up, shaking hands, and even speaking on stage. Companies like BlackRock, Fidelity, JP Morgan, MasterCard, CME, Bloomberg, the NASDAQ, BNY Mellon, they wouldn't be showing up to this event if they didn't believe they could benefit off the products that Ripple has to offer. And what do we know for sure as well, Johnny? We know that it does not take utility to have a bull market. We've seen it in 2017. We saw it in 2021. And I'm anticipating once again, we are most likely going to see this at the end of 2025, heading into early 2026. And the numbers really speak for themselves. Altcoins like Ethereum went from $200 to $4,000. We had projects like XRP, which were being persecuted and attacked at the time, going from 17 cents to nearly $2 all the way back in 2021. Well, now we're going to get a market that's regulated, receiving ETFs, Wall Street demand, and on top of it all, products like Ripple is offering today are going live inside the American markets. So with these big companies showing up and the altcoin season we've been predicting on the horizon, for people who are only in this market for a price appreciation standpoint, nothing has changed. We are still looking at the same crypto market we were looking at a few years ago, and a liquidity cycle could take us into that next euphoric moment. But I wanted to give you guys a brief analysis here that was shared by Paul Barron, where Paul Barron shares, why would banks use XRP? And I very much agree with Paul. He does a phenomenal job. Everybody should check out his content. He tweeted out this, an XRP plot twist. Is this what Brad Garlinghouse has been working for all along? Every bank is racing towards launching its own stablecoin, while Swift pitches a neutral rails. What's the reality? JP Morgan, Bank of America, Citibank, and Wells Fargo are creating a U.S. consortium stablecoin. We have ING, Deutsche Bank, UniCredit, and 6 others developing a European stablecoin. We also have the Bank of America's CEO stating that they are ready to launch these products in 2025 once regulations are clear. Banks don't want neutral infrastructure, they want control. But here's the kicker. More proprietary systems equals more fragmentation. JP Morgan will have a coin that needs to communicate with Bank of America. Bank of America will have a coin that needs to communicate with Eurobank. What bridges these walled gardens? That's where the XRP utility enters this market.
Mic drop right there. Pretty much Paul nailed it. He is not wrong. Paul is spot on. At the end of the day, these guys want something that all works together, but they're creating their own silos. Something has to bridge the gap between them, and that's exactly what XRP does. And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier, is what I think is happening here, Abs. Those companies are going to start to look at real use cases of what's happening in the market. What can they use? Well, guess what? Here you got Ripple on the side building their own bridges for the companies they've purchased, and they're going to be able to demonstrate how the technology works. They're going to be able to have real world examples and lower cost than anybody else. And remember, to win the game in the finance system, the lower cost usually wins, right? So that's what you're going to start seeing here, is companies are going to start building their own, And then this is how innovation works. I worked in innovation 30 years. We don't go and reinvent the wheel. We go look to see what's working and we reapply. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes you design from scratch, but blockchain is, a new technology. So now you're going to see how other companies are using it, and then you typically tend to reapply it in your own use case. And I think that's why it's so brilliant, so brilliant. And I give if I was giving ratings to the Ripple senior management team, I'd give them the highest rating possible, because they said, we've got to let people see how this thing works. They knocked on doors. Nobody really wanted to play with them. They said, well, screw it. We're just going to go buy the companies and build it ourselves. And then we're going to show everybody how it works. And then they're going to come knocking on our door. And I honestly believe you're going to start, not today, but 3, 4, 5 years from now, you're going to hear all these kinds of stories. Hey, they came to us. They want our technology, and it's going to be deployed. So I think that's how this thing's going to play out. But I think Paul Barron nailed the nail on the head when he said that you need something to bridge those gaps.
And David actually highlighted even further, Johnny, that he believes it will take institutional adoption to pave the way for the next retail adoption of these assets. But anybody who's been in this market for a year remembers XRP was able to do a 400% green candle in November of 2024. That was less than 12 months ago. And what's great about that, Johnny, is that was purely speculative. No utility entered this market. And so for anybody out there who's saying, if we don't get utility, these prices aren't going to move, the data and the analytics speak very differently to this. And they say, actually, the majority of price movement happens in the speculation phase. But let's dive into what David had to say in this tweet. While the rest of crypto tries to integrate their DeFi into TradFi, Ripple is integrating their TradFi into DeFi. This is the single stroke of genius that will define XRP's success. Ripple has strategically circumvented the system to simply become TradFi 2.0. David responded by saying, I think institutional adoption is needed to pave the way for the next wave of retail adoption. If DeFi is going to replace TradFi, it's going to have to do all the boring things that TradFi does, and institutional adoption seems to be the most likely way to make that possible. So with all this coming, and with all these narratives on the horizon, everybody's focused on the ETFs, but these real-world developments happening in the background will be the game changers for XRP in the long run. What's your analysis here?
Yeah, I mean, I could not agree more, David. At the end of the day, none of this happens without institutional adoption. And one of the things that I think is kind of holding that all up has been this little thing we have been hearing called the Clarity Act, right? The Clarity Act is going to, I really think, be the linchpin to allow institutions and companies to finally feel comfortable to be able to invest and innovate in this space, just like they were in 1996 and 97. But we've been waiting for that, Abs. And right now, I think when that institutional money comes in, that's when, now, let me just say this and be clear about institutional money. That's still going to be speculative money, but it's going to be speculative money coming from the big boys who understand that value is going to appreciate and go up in time, right? Versus when retailers speculate, you and I can speculate, but we're not going to, our money isn't going to change the game. Institutional money changes the game because it puts people to work. It puts, you're innovating in a certain area, a certain place. And when you place those big bets on things, you can drive things up. So to me, I think, Abs, we are going to see a wave of innovation coming in this space. We're going to see price appreciation. And you know what? I think it's so important for our viewers to make sure, guys, when all this stuff starts happening, be prepared to take some profits on the way up, because this is a speculative market. So what does that mean, guys? Speculative market means price goes up, but then prices can come back down. What we're doing is we are using Merlin to create our exit plans, get our alerts, and exit. And then, for me, what we're doing, me and Abs, we are using ITrust capital for our retirement portfolios. Now, we have our non-retirement ones too. But for retirement, why am I using a Roth IRA and ITrust capital? I'll tell you why. Well, here's a beautiful thing. When you create, most people don't know this, Abs. When you create a Roth IRA, you actually, anything that grows in a Roth IRA after the money's been in there for 5 years, and when you reach your retirement age, 59 and a half years old, Abs, did you know you get to take it out tax-free? Anything that's in there, any growth. So if you want to see your portfolios grow tax-free, we've just given you the blueprint.
And the best part, Johnny, using promo code GEC9, you get $100 free to fund your iTrust Capital account. And we always share the products that we're taking advantage of. But the thing our listeners should know, money will come in and money will go out. And it's not about how much money you make. It is how much money you keep during these bull markets. That's why we leverage both Merlin and iTrust Capital on this program. But I'd love to hear, do you guys believe XRP is a meme coin, or does this asset have real world utility? For me and Johnny, It's real world utility. These meme coins stay on the sidelines. If you enjoyed this content, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you all in the next one.
Good night.